Wassail! Hello everyone. I am Elliot, and I am an Anglo-Saxon man born and raised in the south of England, within Britain. And although I was brought up to be a non-believing fellow in anything beyond the bodily world, by my mother, but not willingly, she did not mean to make me a non-believer, I am, and have been for a while now, about 4 years or so, a heathen, or a Fyrn Sidu, as I would say. Fyrn being an English word, other than the plant, to mean old, or highly old, over-old, and Sid being an English word that would mean much the same thing as the word from Latin, tradition. Now, my true belief within the gods and the elves, and more or less the holy tides that are held about the year, began when I was nearly 17 years old, when I was in Germany with my mother for a getaway, which would last about a week. Now, on one night where it was so dark that you could not see further than 5 feet or so from the balcony that we were sitting at, the mightiest thunderstorm I ever saw and felt happened, and it might as well have happened all about me and on top of me. And after 15 minutes straight, I was utterly awestruck. Now, you need to understand that this was a hotel that we were staying in that was sitting on top of a mount within a dale, also filled with other mounts nearby. Now, when thunder, or Thor, threw or struck his hammer, Mjolnir, or Mildon as I would say, as well as lightning, the whole dale itself shone brighter than day itself. And I am being truthful with that. And my body was not shaking in a bad or mad kind of way. It was mildly shaking, and my mind was filled with wonder, full of wonder. And yeah, you could say that the striking god struck me with sheer awe. That is all I can say about that in short. That is how I became a believer. But before that, as a side bit of knowledge to go along with that, I was always a yearner for what came before, and this is how I came to learn of the old ways, and that is why I, in time, went over to the old ways. And I loved learning about the Viking Eld and all the times that came before that, like the Romans and the Fyrn British thieves as well that fought against the Romans, and even times after the Viking Eld, to be fair, even when Christendom was in full swing and more or less became the faith of Europe. And it was through your law that I found the old law of my Germanish and Celtic forebears, as well as their faiths. And the more I kept reading of their tales, the more it felt more alive to me. And that is how I was led onto the road which would take me into the old ways, before that Thor the Striker put that awareness in my head. And I know it is said by many folk, but I will say it myself as well, now that I have this chance, this time, that when you have a faith which, although not everyone has a link to by blood, and should not be required to have a link by blood to believe and worship the faith, or worship within the faith, it does feel so great, to be truthful, to have a faith where you know that your forebears, for longer than 2,000 years, 3,000 years, mayhaps even 6,000 years, have been worshipping and going about or keeping true to their lives for all that time. And to think that you come from that, you are a bit of that, you are a carrying on of that fire, that fine torch. It feels great. I think most folk should seek out and find, their inborn faith, their faith that is true, and their faith that is linked heavily to their land. So like most folk, me going about the faith in my early days and feigning my forebears and the gods themselves started off rather slow, but over time I built that with morning and evening beads that I do, and eating time beads I do before I eat. Along with all the wonderful holidays where I also give gifts, in the great ring of giving and getting, I also like to see my kin and do beads there, and also sing songs that I have made for the gods. Now, for anyone who may be wondering, the most holy and most weighty holidays that are for heathens anyway are Yule, Seablot, and Winterfulth. There is also Mother's Night, although that is more of an Anglo-Saxon thing, and there are a few others like the Even Nights as well as the Summer Solstead and the Winter Solstead, all lovely holy tides to be fair, and all worthy of celebrating in my mind, which, to be fair, all have their even equivalents in other Indo-European branches too. I will say that I do have a great deal to thank for, or be thankful for, sorry, more so to the Harmonia Foundation, which is being run, as of now, by the lovely Bjorn Ekdal. He and everyone else within that Discord are kind, helpful, and wanting to learn. They take their faith seriously. We may not be able to see one another, but even though we are lands away from one another, we feel like we are fellow kinsmen almost. I know that might be a bit much, but I think to a given length that is how it feels, for me anyway. And it's so wonderful to have a place where you can speak, learn, or even become friends with folk who believe the same kind of thing. Now, to be fair, with the Harmonia Foundation, we are a wonderful thing, since we teach that the Indo-European truth is one. So even if it's Slavish, Roman, Greekish, or Vedish, or Germanish, or Celtish, they are all reflections of one faith, one truth. But we still get that wonderful manifoldness of culture and the experience of that truth, and knowing that although we are different and that we should be celebrating our differences, we also have that amazingly sheen bit of similarity, that shared root, the Indo-European root. Although I understand in a few ways why it has come about, I do think mankind is slowly losing, and at a growing speed no less, faith as well as good behaviours and kindness, and living within the kindly world, even if in small ways. And I think all folk need to find their inborn soul and find the good and wisdom within their forebears, and give heed and respect to them, not an odd loathing at everything they have made for us, as I know many of ye in the West have started to see like me. This is what society needs in my mind, and I fear it is getting out of hand. I know our forebears were not flawless. However, to think of them and speak of them so ill-like is wrong. I cannot put it into as many words as I would love to, but in short, it is wrong. Now, I still sometimes feel like hiding my faith. Not that I want to shove it in front of the faces of others by any means, no. But I have had my fair share of wanting and yearning to do something like a bead where I give thanks for the food that I eat, or when I wish to meditate outdoors. But since there are some good folk out and about near me, I have in those times chosen to hide my faith, not wanting to be laughed at or thought as a madman, since sadly that is something that weighs on my mind when out with non-believers. Will they treat me less? Will they think of me less? I do not want to shove it down anyone's throats. I want to go about my life and let others live their lives as they want to, so long as it is not evil or harming others. So, in the end, all I can say, as a man who is hoping to help in any way I can, is to give you this bit of rede, this wisdom. Do your best to not be afeard of others when it comes to going about your faith, if you do believe anyway. Keep it to yourself and do not be uncouth and unbecoming with it by any means, like how some folk seem to do, as I am sure you know who I am speaking of. But don't let your yearning to feign the ghosts and gods of our world be overridden utterly by those walking by, or by those who may look at you funny or say something off-putting. Know that you are the one who is living and finding truth in a way that cannot be understood by an unopened mind, and that by your good deeds will you stead yourself fast in the wonderful world of kind. Thank you for listening. I am Elliot, and it has been most winsome for me to be here. Hail!